We are in the book of Proverbs, and just for the sake of getting us back into the book, we take just a moment to talk about Solomon a little bit more. We did that last week, and I think it would do us well to speak of it today, because we are talking about a man who had extraordinary wisdom. But even when you have extraordinary wisdom, that doesn't mean you can't make mistakes. And that doesn't mean you can't make phenomenally bad mistakes, because wisdom is something to be hung on to, something to grab a hold of and to keep, to always rely upon. But one can get to a point, and they're not doing it anymore. It is then taken as something that is inconvenient, or something that isn't exactly what I would want to do. Therefore, it is set aside, and when that is done, well, there's going to be consequences from it. But we want to talk about first off, wisdom literature, because the book of Proverbs is part of wisdom literature. Wisdom literature is a section of the Old Testament, just like there's history and the law and major prophets and minor prophets. There's also the section of wisdom literature that begins with Job, then Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. Okay, and with those 5 books, Solomon is represented in all but one, Job. Solomon is represented in every one of those books: Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. So in 4 of the books of wisdom literature, Solomon has a part in them. With Psalms, we know he has 2 Psalms there, 72 and 127. And of course, with Proverbs, this is him speaking to his son in this. And of course, there are others that come in as well in the book. And some we don't even know who they are, but he's represented in it. And we know that he spoke 3,000 Proverbs. Now, we don't have all those Proverbs in the book of Proverbs, but we just want to make note concerning Solomon. Now, there is, just for the sake of understanding human beings, just for the sake of understanding it, as we read last year, as we read, it's been a long week, as we read last week, okay, with Solomon asking for wisdom, and God is going to grant it to him, and grant it to him abundantly. That does not mean that Solomon is going to always do what is wise. Now, we read from 1 Kings chapter 3 last week with him asking for that wisdom, but we didn't read the following. Let's go to verse 1. So 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 1, he's just begun as king. And we see that he's behaving as a Gentile king. He's behaving as someone who is savvy, someone who's clever, someone who has a definite sense in politics and a sense in making political or strategic arrangements. But does that mean he's wise? Because there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference. Nations may do things that are very clever, that they see as being propitious, or they see as being the thing that must be done. But is it actually wise? Well, that's a different question. So we're at 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 1. Now Solomon, look at this, made a treaty with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's how he made that treaty. And married Pharaoh's daughter. Then he brought her to the city of David until he had finished building his own house in the house of the Lord and the wall all around Jerusalem. So he starts off doing something he should not have done. He starts off with this, and he immediately makes a treaty with Pharaoh, and in this treaty is marrying Pharaoh's daughter. That is what was done. Now, I'll just say, I've probably told you this story before, but it has been a while. Okay, and it concerns this sort of tradition that was done among kings. And this concerns Ramses II. Ramses II is considered a highly likely pharaoh for the Exodus. Highly likely, but they don't know. But it concerns Ramses II. And they actually have the correspondence. The correspondence still exists to know what occurred. Is that the king of Babylon at the time had married off his daughter to Ramses II, the Pharaoh of Egypt. Well, it's all part of a treaty in all this. Okay, so he married his daughter off to Ramses II. So in given time, now Babylon and Egypt, that's a fairly distant, two distant places. All right, it's going to take quite a while to travel from one to the other. It's going to take a while, and you're going to go through numerous countries to get there. All right? But the king of Babylon wanted to know, he's inquiring, he sends a letter inquiring about the health and welfare of his daughter, who happens to be the princess of Babylon, but now is a queen, one of many, I suppose, one of the many wives, we'll just put it that way, one of the many wives of Ramses II. So he's inquiring, the dad is inquiring about his daughter, and Ramses II is so callous. I don't think he could recognize her in a lineup. Okay? I don't think he could. Because he writes this rather rude letter back to the king saying, if you're so concerned about her, you come over here and you look for her. It's like, what? This is, you married her and you don't even know where she is? And yeah, that's right. If you're so worried about her, come over here and you take a look. I don't know where she is. I think that the king of Babylon did send somebody over to try to find her, but we really don't know how it ended out because we don't know the rest of, if there is correspondence, we don't know what it was. Did they find her or not? Not exactly sure. But as far as the husband, Ramses II, Pharaoh of Egypt, he didn't know where she was. And, you know, it could be that Ramses actually said, wait, did I marry someone for... Yeah, we have the records over here. Oh, well, all right, I don't know where she is. How should I know? But this is one of the things that was occurring in the ancient world. And Solomon should not have been part of that. That's what I'm getting at, is that he's beginning to behave almost immediately like the Gentile nations. He shouldn't be. Now, David had a lot of wives, and he had concubines. All right, so did Saul. But did they gather them out of treaties from various nations? Well, no. Abigail was not from a treaty. Now, Michal, or Michael, however you want to pronounce her name, who was Saul's daughter that he gave to David because he killed Goliath. But there wasn't this making of treaties. Now, let's go to chapter 11. 1 Kings chapter 11. We're going to begin in verse 1. And we see what occurs, what he has done, how he has done about everything. Actually, if we were to read more concerning Solomon, that Solomon did precisely what God told the kings not to do. Because before there were any kings, God provides laws concerning those kings in the law of Moses. Before there were any kings in Israel. This is how the kings were to behave themselves. Okay, one of those is wife collecting. You don't need to be doing that. But King Solomon loved many foreign women. as well as the daughter of Pharaoh, women of, look at this, the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, from the nations of whom the Lord had said to the children of Israel, you shall not intermarry with them, nor they with you. Surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods. Solomon clung to these in love. Now, so there's more than just basic treaties. Now, he did have an attraction to them, evidently, because it says he clung to them, to these in love, though I have no... I made this joke years ago. You know the song, When a Man Loves 1,000 Women? Because that's what we're looking at with Solomon. That's what we're looking at. Okay? And how could he? But I will say this concerning Solomon. Solomon doesn't do anything by half measure. He doesn't do anything in any kind of ordinary way. Really, he doesn't. He doesn't. I don't know if Solomon was an overly obese man or a very thin man, but I think that Solomon would have been an extreme. I think he would. That's just my thinking. Solomon had all of these wives, and of course it's coming. You know, he's doing the same thing that he did concerning Egypt. He's making treaties is what he's doing. And his household would have seemed to be exotic. Highly exotic. There's not a homegrown girl here. Not a single one. They're either from Egypt or Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, and they are all princesses. They're coming from royal families. He's not getting somebody's, milkmaid. All right, these are all princesses, and it's matter of fact, verse 3, and he had 700 wives, princesses. All right, so they're royalty. And 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. Now, he's been playing with fire, and he's been doing precisely what God told them not to do. That's how this chapter begins, chapter 11. That he's been doing the verse 2, you shall not intermarry with them. They're going to turn your heart away from God, which is what happens. And I believe that with Solomon, when he was younger, I think he was taken by a bit of self-confidence, maybe even arrogance, of thinking, oh yeah, they're not going to turn my heart away. I know that's what it says, but I've got a handle on this. They're not about to do this. I am unwavering. They're not about to do it. But Solomon hasn't lived there yet, has he? And there's a reason why God said not to do it. There is a very good reason. Verse 4, for it was so when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods. One would think as he got older, he would get wiser. One would think. But he becomes weakened. He doesn't have the unwaveringness that he might have had earlier. He doesn't have the stamina. He doesn't have the determination. But he becomes weaker because of all this, because he's been living in a house with these various wives who are turning him away from God. And what he does is punishable by death. What he does. Now, who's going to do it? It would be up to God to do it. Who's going to do it? He's the king. But this is what he's doing are capital crimes. Let's finish verse 4. For so it was when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord and did not fully follow the Lord as did his father David. Then Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill that is east of Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the people of Ammon. And he did likewise for all his foreign wives who burned incense and sacrifices to their gods. So it's more than just what's mentioned here. It's more than just the Ammonites and the Moabites and Sidonians. It's more than that. It's for all these others. What about his first wife? What about Pharaoh's daughter? Yeah, possibly. I don't know. Possibly. And so this is why God is going to split that kingdom. And Rehoboam, Solomon's son, is not going to have a united kingdom. He's going to have the southern kingdom of Judah. The rest goes to Jeroboam. And it's going to be split from there on after because of this. Now, verse 9, so the Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned from the Lord God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice and had commanded him concerning this thing that he should not go after other gods, but he did not keep what the Lord had commanded. So what does this mean? This means someone can know what to do, they just won't do it. Or what is that called? That by definition is folly. That's foolishness. When you don't know what to do and you're not following what you ought to be doing, if you don't know what to do and you're just kind of stumbling around, that's called ignorance. That's no good either. That's no good. That's called ignorance. But when you do know what you should be doing and you refuse it, that's foolishness, is what that is. Now, I want us to go to Nehemiah. Let's go to the book of Nehemiah. And we're going to see something that is that Nehemiah says in all this, because they have a problem in that day. Nehemiah is trying to rebuild the people, and he has discovered to his horror that there's been a lot of intermarrying that's been going on with the enemies of Israel and the enemies of God. Or you've got those that are sons-in-law to some of the worst enemies of the day. Nehemiah 13, verse 25. And here is Nehemiah having to deal with what they have been doing. So I contended with them and cursed them, struck some of them and pulled out their hair and made them swear by God, saying, you shall not give your daughters as wives to their sons, nor take their daughters for your sons or yourselves. He's having to deal with this problem. And then says this, did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin by these things? Yet among many nations there was no king like him, who was beloved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, pagan women caused even him to sin. Even him to sin. That no one is immune. I have to say, in my own thinking, if there was any human being, and I'm not talking about Christ, setting him aside, any human being that one could say, oh, well, he would have a complete mastery over this, that he would, this wouldn't bother him, he would be, it would be Solomon. It would be Solomon. I can't think of anybody else that would have such a control over himself, but he doesn't. He's human like the rest of us, and he can have all this knowledge and yet just toss it away. Just toss it. All right? Of where you have been given something that is of great value and you just set it aside because you don't want it. You set it aside because that's not what you want. You have these other things in mind. So what if God said you were not to intermarry with these Canaanites, with these various nations? That's what he wants to do. And so Solomon is going to do what he wants to do. That's what happens. Now, we bring this out to show, one, is that It's exactly what Paul brings out in the book of 1 Corinthians. I'm just going to go there very quickly. Chapter 10, verse 12, therefore let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. That goes to Solomon as well. Now, that's obviously written way after Solomon, but that goes to Solomon as well. You think you stand? Yeah, you're putting too much confidence in yourself. Way too much confidence. Let's go where we ended up last week, and which is Proverbs chapter 3. And I want us to look at some things here before we go where we're going to actually begin. But we read these last week. So Proverbs chapter 3, beginning in verse 25, we see this "do not be afraid" section, and going down to verse 31, "do not envy a man of violence." And in this section, we may think that there is no pattern here. We may think that these are just kind of random thoughts being spilled out on the page, but they're not. They're not random at all. First off, in "do not be afraid of sudden terror," that's verse 25, "or of the ruin of the wicked when it comes. For the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught." He's already mentioned that. And this is the assurance of wisdom. It's the assurance of God. But in this case, it's the assurance of wisdom. That wisdom, you apply yourself to wisdom, wisdom will guard you. You hold on to wisdom, wisdom will be there for you. And all these things. You don't have to, as we have said, you don't have to worry about the consequences of sins you never did. You don't have to worry about it at all. It doesn't exist. You don't have to worry about the traps you avoided. You don't have to worry about it. And wisdom helps you with those traps. But here is this assurance in this. But look at verse 27. "Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to do it. Do not say to your neighbor, 'Go and come again tomorrow, and I will give it,' when you have it with you." Then we come to verse 29. "Do not plan evil against your neighbor who dwells trustingly beside you." All right, so here is this: do not withhold good and do not plan evil. That's looking from two different directions in all this. Don't withhold any good. Do the good. Do not plan any evil against anybody. Don't plan evil at all. Then we have verse 30. "Do not contend with a man for no reason when he has done you no harm." All right. "Do not envy a man of violence, and do not choose any of his ways." So don't contend for any reason. For just any reason. Don't contend with a man for just any reason. Nor should you envy the way of the oppressor, or envy the way of a wicked man. You don't do either of those things. And this is all these are do nots in this. They're negatives. Do not do these things, but it's looking at them from different directions. Don't withhold good. Don't plan evil. Don't contend with a man without a good reason, without a proper cause, and don't envy the wicked. Now, we can look at those. Let's just go quickly to the book of Amos. We look in chapter 3, and we see that there's a warning that's being given, but it's a warning to a people who they are wicked, and they have been living the life of luxury. They are phenomenally wealthy. So Amos chapter 3, verse 15, "I will destroy," look at this, "the winter house, along with the summer house. The houses of ivory shall perish." All right, these are people with multiple houses. There's the winter house. All right, forget that one. The summer house, forget that one. The houses of ivory, What is that? That is opulence. That is showing extraordinary wealth. And then, and the great houses shall have an end, says the Lord. Well, in looking at all this, before this message coming from Amos, before all this, wouldn't that not be something to envy? Like keeping up with the Joneses. Well, the Joneses have a winter house, a summer house. Did we even mention the ivory? Or the what? The ivory house. And these great houses, they're all going to have an end. Now, chapter 4, verse 1, hear this word, you cows of Bashan who are on the mountain of Samaria. Look at this. Who oppress the poor, who crush the needy. And look at this. It's this lackadaisical, luxurious sort of mindset. Not bothered at all. You've oppressed the poor, you've crushed the needy, who say to your husbands, bring wine, let us drink. All right, it's been a rough day oppressing the poor. You know, and it's just write it off. It means nothing to them that they have done this. All right, and here is once again this extraordinary prosperity and luxury and opulence. Something to envy? It'd be easy to, yeah. But you shouldn't. You shouldn't do it. Because we have not only the message from Amos to them, but we also have from the book of Proverbs 14 and verse 11, the house of the wicked shall be overthrown or will be destroyed. Okay. And I'm quoting from two different translations. The house of the wicked will be destroyed. It's going to come to an end. Don't envy a man of violence and do not choose any of his ways. Now, we come to Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 32. And here we have an interesting sort of pattern that is present in this. And it's a pattern that goes from negative to positive. And we're going to do that from verses 32, 33, and 34. Then it finishes up, it's like a punctuation. It finishes up doing the opposite. It goes from positive to negative. So it's negative to positive, then finishing it, and it's all poetic, then positive to negative. But the first verse, why should we not envy the wicked? Well, these next verses are going to tell us. Verses 32 to 35. For the devious person is an abomination to the Lord. And now we have this comparative that's done. Okay, so the devious person is an abomination to the Lord, but the upright are in His confidence. All right, that's why. That's a good reason right there. That's a very good reason. And now, we just want to take a moment to talk about what a devious person is. What is in this Hebrew word? Well, from the Hebrew word, it is someone who is crafty, someone who's cunning, and someone who is crooked. This is someone, we can also use another word, wily. This is someone who is always looking for an advantage over somebody else. Always. Now, I'm sure you've met them. I'm sure you've met them. I know that in my lifetime I have met smart people, but you could trust them. They were smart people, but you could trust them. And I've met others that they were smart too. They weren't smarter than this other person, but they were devious. They're thinking from a different direction. They're not thinking about solving problems or friendships or anything like that. They are trying to find their way into their next advantage. And however the wind blows, they're going to make sure they are where they want to be. However the wind is blowing. And they are out to fool somebody today. They're out to do something devious today. Genesis 6 and 5 How is that world before the flood described? That the intents of their hearts was evil continually. All right, that's devious. That's devious. There was bloodshed in that day, and I personally think that prior to the flood, you will find extraordinarily intelligent people. Not only were they intelligent and highly talented, but they had centuries to develop it. All right, I think they could stand way above us. I really do, as far as matters of intelligence and talent and just being able to figure things out. I think they could. But their hearts were evil continually. Not everybody, but their hearts, because we have Noah, who found grace in the eyes of God. In Matthew 23 and 14, Jesus speaks of those who devour widows' houses and for a pretense make long prayers. Okay? Devouring widows' houses is not a good thing. You also have, going back to Amos chapter 2, verses 6 through 8, you have those who sell the righteous for silver and the poor for a pair of sandals. That's not a good person. These are devious people. And they are the ones who they're not held by moral thought or the fear of God. They're just going to behave however they want to behave. That's what they're going to do. And for the devious person is an abomination to the Lord, but the upright are in His confidence. Verse 33, the Lord's curse is on the house of the wicked, but, by comparison, He blesses the dwelling of the righteous. Verse 34, toward the scorners He is scornful, but to the humble He gives favor. And of course, we see that in places like James 4:6, in complete agreement with the book of Proverbs. 1 Peter 5:5, in agreement with James and also the book of Proverbs, but in other places as well. He gives the favor to the humble, is what He does. Now, verse 35, here's the end of this little section. The wise will inherit honor, that's a positive, but fools get disgrace. All right? Fools get disgrace. Now, I want us to go back to verse 34. Toward the scorners, He is scornful. Now, I'm just going to go to Psalm 2. Psalm 2. Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against His anointed, that's against His Messiah, saying, let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. Notice the response in heaven. He is scornful to the scorners. Verse 4, He who sits in the heavens shall laugh and shall hold them in derision. Then He shall speak to them in His wrath and distress them in His deep displeasure. He laughs at what they're trying to do. He's scornful toward the scorners. And they're trying to do something that's completely impossible. It's impossible. You cannot stop God's plans. You cannot do it. And when it comes to the saving of the souls of mankind, you better get out of the way. Because you definitely can't stop that. You can't stop the first one that He wants to do, but when it comes to the largest, the greatest show of love for His creation, you're not going to stop that. You're not going to do it. He's going to have His king on His holy hill of Zion. So He is in fact going to scorn. Toward the scorners, He is scornful. That's what He will do. That's what He always will do. And so we go back to verse 31 in all this. So just back to Proverbs chapter 3, verse 31. Do not envy the man of violence, and do not choose any of his ways. Why? Because verses 32 to 35 show why. They show through this contrast. Now we go to chapter 4. So Proverbs chapter 4, verse 1. And here we have Solomon addressing us again as a son. It's this father speaking to his son. And we're still in this discourse. Hear, O son, a father's instruction, and be attentive that you may gain insight. For I will give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. When I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast to my words, keep my commandments, and live. And we're going to see, we've already seen before, of where wisdom is called a tree of life. Wisdom and life go hand in hand. They go together. Wisdom gives life. Well, what does folly give? The opposite. You have the path of death that's there. You have the path right straight to the grave. That's with folly. But here, this is your life. This is for you to live. Keep my commandments and live. Verse 5, get wisdom, get insight. Do not forget and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Now, we're just going to bring it back around again that even Solomon, who can say this, might not follow it. All right? Let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. Don't get too self-confident. Don't get arrogant. And I can't say that he was arrogant. I don't know, but it would seem like he's way too confident. I'll just put it that way. That somehow he has a confidence. But guess what? God is not mocked. And that means even with someone like Solomon, he's not going to be mocked. He's not going to be mocked by anybody. Because anyone in the day of Solomon could have said, I've read from the law of Moses, you're not supposed to be doing what the king is doing. You're not supposed to be doing that. Matter of fact, you can go with the laws concerning the king, and Solomon seems to be breaking about every one of them. He seems to be doing it. You don't multiply horses. That's what he's doing. You don't go to Egypt and buy horses. That is to increase your cavalry or whatever it is you're doing. He's doing that too. There's a list of things, and if you look at it, you will see that's exactly what Solomon is doing. Now, does this devalue the book of Proverbs? No, it doesn't. But what it does do is show that someone can have the knowledge and reject the knowledge. You can do it. The scribes did. Pharisees did. So many others did. There's scholars to this day. Give you an example. Man, I have a set of his books. Not a member of the church. He's not alive anymore. He died a number of years ago. But he was a Greek scholar. A Greek scholar. And he would go word by word through the Greek New Testament and go to great degree to show the meaning of certain words, and in the context of this is what it must mean, and all of that. And he goes into extraordinary detail. But when it came to passages such as Acts 2:38 concerning requirements for salvation, suddenly he threw it out the window. He did. He did say this is what the Greek means, but it can't mean that because. And he's bringing in his own ideology. He's bringing in his own theology. He's bringing his own doctrines. Well, it's not his own doctrines. It's what he grew up with, I suppose. But what he believes. Here it is in plain Greek for him, in plain Greek. And all of a sudden, he doesn't do it for any other place except where he disagrees with what the text demands. Okay, so did he know the text? Yeah, in the original language. Did he reject it? Yeah, he did. He rejected it. Well, Solomon can do the same thing. Anyone can do the same thing. Now, let's go back to chapter 4. So Proverbs chapter 4, verse 5. Get wisdom, get insight. Do not forget and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will keep you. Love her, and she will guard you. The beginning of wisdom is this. Get wisdom, and whatever you get insight. Prize her highly, and she will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. If you do. It's not just a word service or lip service. Is not just saying a good game. It's if you embrace her. She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown. All right, when you do this, this will happen. Or if you do this, this will happen. It's bringing about the same thing. It's still potential when you do it. Not that you have done it, but when you do it or if you do it. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's a matter of potential that should you do this, this will be the result. And she will bestow on you a beautiful crown. She will be there for you in all of this. Well, we will continue next week. We've run out of time. And thank you, everybody.